What she would want you to say, what she would want you all to know is that she would want you to be happy for her because she lived a good life, and she would want this to be a celebration, and she would want this to be short. So we're going to work on that. Before I go any further, I have to thank three people that were really big in the planning of this service, but managed to keep themselves off the speakers list, as all good organizers do. My brother Dave and his wife Melinda were here organizing all of this work. Dave in the back, I know where Melinda is, but she's around here someplace. And then also I want to introduce Jean Cowan, who is one of Joyce's nieces, who's up here in the front row, and along with two of her other nieces and Carol Campbell, they were the ones that really put this all together. But Jean and Dave and Melinda were wise enough to keep themselves from being up here. I also want to take a moment to recognize Barbara Schaefer, who's our pianist for tonight. Barbara was my Sunday school teacher. About the same time that I had Joyce as a school teacher, but she's not nearly that old. She was playing as an infant. And it's so good to have her here with us again. Thanks, Ms. Schaefer. Okay, so the first thing is the song In the Garden. And this is one of those songs where I remember going to lots of funerals for neighbors and things like that with Joyce. And my mom and dad would sit there, and then I would sit with Joyce. And she would pass me half sticks of doublemint gum. Never a full stick, always a half stick. And draw things with me on the programs to kind of keep me quiet. And then she would make comments about, oh no, not that hymn again. Everybody uses that hymn. Oh, that's a nice one. I haven't heard that one in a long time. But the only one I ever remember her telling me, this is one of those to use, was In the Garden. And I think it's a really fitting one. So I'd like to ask those of you that are able and want to stand up and let's sing In the Garden for Joyce.
Oh
Thanks. You see the I think she heard that. You guys are good. Now, I did mess up, though, because I was supposed to do a prayer before this. When I was about to get married, and I had fallen in love with this beautiful girl that I'm married to now, Denise, and Denise was raised as a Buddhist, and being a Christian, I was kind of worried about that. So I went to my dad, who, if any of you knew my dad, you knew he didn't say anything. And then I talked to my mom about it, but mom kind of said things to make me feel good. So it didn't really help. I didn't really know what she really thought. So then I chose to talk to Joyce about it. And all of you know that when you talk to Joyce, you have to choose what you talk about carefully, because you're going to hear exactly what she thinks. And if you're not ready for that, you don't ask her. So I asked her what she thought about that, and she's told me, you know, Denise and her family are good people. You marry them, and you'll be okay. She approved, which was important to me. And then she said, you know, about her not being a Christian, God will take care of that. You just worry about loving them. So, I know there are folks here that come from different religious traditions. Joyce was very open and accepting of that with people. So I'd like to take a moment so that we can all have a moment of silence first. And then for those of us that were Christians like Joyce was, I'm going to lead us in a little prayer. Okay, so let's have a moment of silence first. Dear Lord, thank you for this time to come together to celebrate the life of Joyce Vance. She was very special to all of us, as you can see from how many people are here. Joyce took us into her family. We took her into ours. We learned from her. We trusted her with things. We spent time together and just were with her. Thank you for that time. Let us be together in that spirit tonight as we celebrate her life and remember all the wonderful things that she did for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I'd now like to invite Carol Chandler, Joyce's cousin, up here to read from the Bible. Joyce always told me that if this should ever happen to her, we should not read from any translation other than the King James Version, because that's what she had memorized.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you all for coming. I know Joyce would love to be here and greet you all in person, but she's here in spirit. And this is her favorite song. And since it's up there on the screen, would you like to all repeat it with me? Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Bless you all.
Thanks, Kelly. Now we have a chance for some of us to come up and tell some stories and to give some tributes to Joyce. I know probably all of you could come up and tell some stories about Joyce, and we'd be here all night. And Joyce would not like that. So we've chosen 4 communities, if you will, to kind of be represented by folks. And the first community is the family. Who knew that I had a bunch of Vance cousins in South Dakota, Salt Lake City, over in the Midwest someplace, blonde and blue-eyed, but I do. And it's been a pleasure to get to know some of them during this. Not a good time, but good anyhow. And representing the family is Joan Bear, one of Joyce's nieces.
It's just wonderful seeing all of you here tonight. I'm honored to speak tonight on behalf of Joyce's Vance family and to share a little bit with you about the Joyce that we all knew. After losing her father when she was just a toddler, Joyce was raised by her mother and her older siblings. My dad was her oldest brother. They raised her to be a successful and independent person, and she was. They were proud of Joyce, and they were proud of her accomplishments. We know Joyce was influential in so many children's lives, and she was well known throughout the state of South Dakota as well. But we, her nieces and nephews, especially remember her for being important in our lives. We were proud of her and we respected her, but we really thought that she was just really fun to be with. All kids should have an aunt like our Aunt Joyce. She would ride a fast toboggan down an icy slope with us in the winter. Aunt Joyce was the one who would compete in a sack race, invite us to scout camp, organize card games at family reunions, teach us new words, and encourage our ukulele skills. She always threw her support behind family talent shows and hootenannies. And she had a gift for writing these hysterically funny lyrics for us kids to sing to the tune of familiar songs. We also remember the fun of baking molasses cookies with Joyce. She'd organize all of us little cousins so that everybody had a job. Somebody would do the stirring, somebody would roll the cookie dough into balls, somebody would roll it in sugar, somebody would watch the oven. She had unending patience with us, but I think she enjoyed the cookie making just as much as we did. And we did try to be our best around her. As my sister Peg recalls, you didn't get away with stupid stuff around Joyce. She urged us to stand up straight, sing out, and participate. And she was that way herself, as you know. Joyce could be competitive. One year at a Dupree town celebration, that's the little town where she grew up, she signed up for the 18 and over foot race, and she was in it to win. So she had family cheering her on, and she went all out in this race. Fell at the finish line, had to get a couple of stitches. It was great. She participated in the shoe kicking contest, any kind of street game that was out there. Joyce was always an avid fan of sports on all levels. Aunt Joyce also broadened our horizons with enriching experiences. One year she brought a piñata to South Dakota for Christmas. This was something that all of us had never seen before. And did we have a good time with that? We remember her lugging big boxes of California oranges out to Dupree at Christmas time. We waited for that. And Jean remembers that it was Joyce who first took her to Disneyland. Joyce developed our knowledge and appreciation of Japanese culture also. When Jean was teaching, Joyce once created a whole unit on Japan for her, including recorded songs that Joyce had sung in Japanese. It was Joyce who introduced me to sushi. She was part Yoda and part Peter Pan for us. And we loved her for it. We loved her for it. These are telling a few of the many memories that we have of Joyce and what an important and unique member of our family she was. Joyce will always have an honored place on our family tree and in our hearts.
Thanks, Joan. Feeling like she was part of my family too. The only thing that was wrong with her was she's a Dodgers fan. I don't think she thought so much of these Dodgers, but she really liked Sandy Koufax and people from that era, Maury Wills. So, but other than that, she was a great. Okay, now we'd like to bring up one of her colleagues. Olin Mosher was one of her administrators and taught with her, and we thought that it would be great to hear from some of the teachers that worked with her. So, Mr. Mosher.
Wow. Without an awful lot of advertisement or notice in the paper, look at the group of people that have gathered tonight. That says something about Joyce. And a couple of the lady teachers from Centerville twisted my arm saying, now, we couldn't talk because we would break down and cry if we did, because we love Joyce so much. I'm hoping that I can get through with what I want to talk to you about today. I do want to add, for those of you that are in education and you remember Bob Brashears from the Fairmont School, Bob was here earlier and we talked as he was leaving, and I don't think he's back again, but anyway, I want to mention, he said, I want you to mention one thing. And each year as we had the kindergarten or the younger group track meet, Joyce would always hand him an envelope. And in that envelope was $20 that he was to put towards the ribbons and the cost of that track meet for the young kids, which is just so classical about her. And for myself, I consider it a real honor when I asked Dr. Doro, our superintendent at the time, when the opening at Centerville came about, I asked him if I could, if he would consider me for that position, and he did. And when I showed up at the school to get ready to start the school year, I saw this rather slender lady with rather large glasses. And up until then, I don't think I had I don't know that I had really met Joyce by then, but she came up to me and very firmly greeted me, and I wondered, Dr. Earl didn't say anything about having a vice principal out there. But we had a good conversation, and as time went on, I grew to just think the world of this lady. She was a very firm teacher, and she said, she told me on many occasions, I tell my kids, they are not going to fail my class. I will see to it that they do not fail. And that meant she was firm, she was fair, but she did an excellent job of teaching. And I just, I feel like that I have been, for the short time that I was there for 3 years, I feel like I definitely have, my life was better, my experiences were better having met and have worked with Joyce at Centerville. Reed Decker, who is here today, and some of the other teachers and myself worked with all of our kids, K through 8, in track, and we had the district track meet and the county track meet and so on, and I could always count on Joyce when it came time to do all of the tedious work of taking all of the entries for this track meet and getting them all down so we would know which races they were in and all this kind of stuff. She was always there and always willing to help and to work, and I surely appreciated that, and I know the kids did too. Let's see, what else? Also, as years went by and when I left, I kept running into Joyce. A lot of times you would see Joyce at the high school sporting events where kids from Centerville were playing and competing at the high school level. And Joyce was there and just to support them. And I've been real curious. How many of you out here tonight were students of Joyce Vance? Can I see your hands? Now, would you look at that? I think that is a great tribute to Joyce, and I do want to thank you, Sharon, for giving me a call and asking me to do this. I feel very honored, and I see some faces out there. I can't place names with all of them, but I recognize some people there, and I hope to get a chance to say hi to you before we leave tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Moser. The next group that we wanted to represent was people that lived around her and were her neighbors. Is Mitzi Burton here?
Yes, I am.
Oh, great. Okay, so we've invited Mitzi Burton to come up and talk, representing the neighbors. Welcome.
I consider this quite an honor because I'm relatively new in the neighborhood, only 15 years, and some people have been here for generations. Joyce knew them all. My husband and I moved out to Wildwood Island in about 2000, and Joyce may have come out there about that time. She knew everybody already by then, though, having been a teacher at Centerville, and I think she was already retired by then. But we became fast friends for a couple of reasons. One were our kitty cats that we shared together. I had 3 and she had 5. And the other was the teaching world. And I think just because she knew the neighborhood and was out in her yard, she loved gardening, she loved visiting, she just met everybody. And she knew, again, generations. She kept me informed. I didn't know most of whom she was speaking about, but she kept me informed about the daughters and sons and who got remarried and if there were grandchildren and who was moving back out to the island and who was moving away, who had bought. And I thought that she could kind of be the honorary historian of the island. It seemed to be a term that she had earned. So I decided to go around and talk to a few of the people on the island, and I live in the south end, so I'm at the small end, so there are many more voices that I know I didn't even get to. But I was wondering too, how many people here tonight are from the Wildwood area? Can you raise your hands? So maybe Miss Vance, Joyce's family could get next to some of you at the reception and hear far more stories. So I talked to a few of the neighbors, and Steve and Teresa lived a couple doors down, and they had Beavers, the kitty cat, and Bailey, and Akio, the adopted dog. And Joyce took care of them all, and she fed them, and Beavers was an outside kitty cat, but Joyce kept me informed that Beavers was home or not home. And if Beavers had food or water, and she would let me know if my cat was in the yard of beavers and make them really friendly. And Steve said he appreciated, his eyes were a little moist, he said he appreciated Joyce because she was the teacher that he got to thank. He never got to thank his other teachers, having been in a military family and moving around so much in his school years, so he got to thank Joyce for all those other teachers. And he said, she gave rides to my son when he'd come to visit and want to go to the golf course, and Joyce would say, well, have him walk over to my house and I'll bring him back over. And so she just took care of people that she probably was just meeting for the first time or barely knew. And then I went to Doris and Michael across the street, and they had the kitty cat Miha. And Joyce took care of Miha also. Miha was an indoor kitty and never went outside, and Joyce would come by my house and she'd say, I need to be down there at 4 o'clock to feed Miha. And I said, if she's an indoor kitty, can't you just leave the food for her? It's kind of a rainy day or something. And she said, oh no, we have to be feeding Miha at 4 o'clock. That's just the way it works. Doris and Michael were kind of new to the neighborhood. I think a couple of years maybe. You're out here somewhere. And but they became fast friends very, very quickly. Joyce just seemed to have that knack. Lisa and Jack lived across from me, and they had a kitty cat Spot. And Spot did get to go outside, but Joyce was quite concerned because sometimes Spot didn't come back around and Spot needed to do that. And so she'd tell me it's kind of bad weather, and Lisa and Jack are gone, and Spot's not going outside. Spot's very unhappy with me. I'll sit around inside and pet her. And we all knew she did that. She loved her animals as much as we did. We were pretty sure. Gail and Rich lived across the street from Joyce when she lived out there, and they had a dog, Luke. And Luke sometimes was in Joyce's yard for his exercise, and I think Joyce probably considered she was a co-owner of Luke. And Gail and Rich gave Joyce the going away party when she was going home to South Dakota. I think she was finally getting into her family and going to move home. And we were tickled that she barely lasted 8 or 9 months. And she said it was the worst winter on record. And she couldn't even get out the door. And she put her forecast in the car when she went back to South Dakota, and she came back, I think, with 2. And so they traveled with her in the car. So we were glad to have her back. Sorry. So Ann and Jack live around the corner from me, and they have 2 dogs, Simba and Shooter, and they have 3 cats and 2 birds. And Joyce watched all of them from time to time as well. She and I agreed that Poncho the bird was not to be messed with. We would put your hand in the cage with Poncho. So we didn't let Poncho out of the cage. And we would talk, have you checked? And now do you need to walk Shooter or Simba? And has Simba gotten her medicine? And Ann said that Joyce said to her one day, I saw Shooter way down Trout Lake Road, way down there, far from your home. And Ann said, oh, that can't be Shooter. Shooter couldn't do that. And sure enough, Shooter was not in the yard, and Shooter was way down where Joyce said that Shooter was. So she kept track of all the animals as well as the children and the grandchildren. Sully and Maheen lived across the street from Ann. They didn't have any pets, but Sully got a little tears in his eyes yesterday, and he said she was the heart of the neighborhood. And I just thought that was the most wonderful phrase for Joyce. She really was the heart of that neighborhood. And then I went down to Mary Henry's house, and I learned that she was I knew she was part of your family. I knew she celebrated with you a lot and had vacations with you a lot, and we kind of thought she was part of our family as well, like we were hearing before. And then I talked to Tanner and Tish across the street, and Tanner's 2nd generation out there, just like Ann and Jack's son, and probably a few more as well. And Tish, I have to tell you, Joyce was so proud of you, just like you were her own daughter or niece or granddaughter, when you set up that Santa Claus thing at the end of the lake for the kids, and Joyce made sure all the little kids in the neighborhood knew about it this past Christmas and got down and to see Santa and got the picture taken. She was just so proud of Tish for that. And Tish said when she and Tanner married, and Tanner's mother, Michelle, is one of Joyce's dear friends also, but Tish said when she and Tanner married, Joyce gave them a cookbook, Centerville cookbook for a wedding gift, and she gave them a meal from that cookbook every month for a year. That's really nice. And then I have to add that Tanner came down later yesterday, and he handed me his list of comments about Joyce, and his first comment was she was strict. And he said she was an old school teacher, but I loved her. He said, she broke a ruler across my desk. That Tanner must have been a bit of a rascal. When I said, did that scare you? He said, he said she sponsored every kid in class for Jogathon, and she kept every kid in class had track shoes. She kept a box with all the cleated track shoes for every child in the class. And then he wrote, heaven forbid, I'm sorry to her family, she was really a slow driver. And he said, heaven forbid you got behind Joyce. There's only one road in and one road out. He said, I knew I couldn't pass her because she knew who I was. Told me. He said, I'm sorry. It was so funny. Here he is in his 30s and he's still in his pants. So then Dan and Polly and Hightower live down the street. They don't have any pets, but they love Joyce. And she had said, I'm going to be coming around more this next year to see you. And Polly said she even stopped when she went to see Yoshino. She would stop and visit Polly's sister Phyllis in Sierra View. And that just touched Polly especially. And so I haven't touched on my own home. Joyce was that kind of friend who rode with me to the emergency vet to take the cat in for the heart specialist for the cat or the eye specialist for the blind cat. And she'd say, I'm the grandmother. And she said, I'll ride in the back so the cat's comfortable. And I rode and she rode in the back of the cat. So the cat didn't get upset when riding in the car. And I just thought, I don't know if I have that many friends who would ever do this. And I knew she loved, and my husband did too. We just knew she loved our pets as much as we did, and it was complete trust for our pets. So those of you whose pets she sat probably also got volumes of notes on your pets. And it tickled me. She wasn't too fond of pronouns at the beginning of her sentences, so a sample would go like this. 7 a.m. Fed all the cats, let the cats out, didn't get Tappy's medicine to her. Casper stayed in, Dugan did a quick pee right back inside. Molly in 5 minutes later, these are all my animals. Rubbed my legs, acted nice. Casper now out, Casper coming in before I leave, going into Sandra for cat food with coupons. 10:30, back to let Tabby in, didn't give her medicine this morning, we'll do it now. Molly out and Casper out. Dugan staying on the bed. We'll come back later to get him out. Revolving door Molly back in. Watch the little sports on TV. 1:45, had lunch with Yoshino, came by to let Dugan out and leave some cat food. 5 cans for $3 with the coupons. She liked a good deal. Dugan ran around, did his big business, and I'm sorry, Jacqueline, he says sometimes she'd say it was in your yard. Casper out, Molly decided she likes me on my lap for quite a while. We'll be back later to feed him. 4 o'clock, getting all animals in before dark. Dugan having an early dinner. Talk to Anne, and she will come by to take Dugan out later. She's home tomorrow and says Dugan can come to her house and spend the day with Shooter and Simba. Molly can see Casper. Casper wants out, but that's not going to happen. 7:30, check with Anne regarding Dugan's watch. She was just incredible. And a couple of things that are semi-related to our neighborhood, but they're just so wonderfully Joyce. She shared with me that one of her students, an only child, was having a nice vacation to Hawaii, and he got to take a friend, and he took Miss Vance. His friend. That's great. I never got it. And the other thing was, we were in Nashville a couple of years ago, and we were getting our rental car at the airport, and the young man said, oh, Sanger, I'm from around that area too. And so we talk, and pretty soon I say, well, did you know Miss Vance? Well, yes, she was my teacher. Nashville, Tennessee. We just got the biggest kick out of that. So the things I learned from Joyce are to absolutely, consistently keep in touch with family and friends, regular basis. And there's no hurry. You need to just take time and visit and sit. And it shouldn't be rushed. She showed so much extra caring to all of us. And again, I just touched a little portion of my neighborhood, but I'm sure she was the way throughout the whole neighborhood. She loved living at Wildwood. And I wanted to share share with you, a few years ago, one of my brothers passed away, and she gave me a card that had, of course, a cat on it. And the cat on the front of the card said, "Not gone." And then on the inside said, "Just gone on ahead." And I thought that was a wonderful way to think of our Christian brothers and sisters. It's just temporary. And thank you for sharing about our Christian faith. As much as we all knew her, that was really kind of private, and I didn't know, and it gives me great joy. So, thank you.
That was great. That was just like being in a conversation with Joyce. I know a lot about your pets. I don't know a lot about all of you, but I know a lot about your pets. So Mr. Mosier actually stole one of my lines. I was going to ask people that were Joyce's students to, sorry, for this part of the talk I have to shift to Miss Vance. Do you know how many years it took me, even though she was at our house a lot growing up, to shift from calling her to Joyce? It was hard. It took a long time. I think I was in college before I could call her Joyce on a regular basis. So I was going to ask how many of you were in her class. We already did that. Let me ask you a different question. How many of you got in trouble by Miss Vance when you were in her class? I admit it. There were times. And the nicest thing about it was that there was never any mystery about it. When you were in trouble, you knew you were in trouble. Your parents probably knew that you were in trouble too. Joyce was fair, has been said, but I don't know if you noticed on the slides earlier, but Pierce, what was his name? Yeah, he says on here, some say mean, but she was fair. I heard that a lot. Miss Vance is your friend? Isn't she mean? Okay, so when you were in the 3rd grade, would you have described her as part Yoda and part Peter Pan? I'm not sure those would have been my choices. But 3rd grade, in a lot of ways, was my best year. I learned multiplication tables. We all learned multiplication tables. I don't remember that fondly, but I remember my multiplication tables. We learned to write in cursive, which that was the best I ever wrote in cursive, was in 3rd grade. I didn't